You're endangering the community. That's what a woman screamed as three men in fluorescent vests slapped a bright yellow zip tie across my back gate and hung a plastic tag that read, "Emergency Access Point. Do not remove." Think about that for a second. Three strangers with crooked ID badges and clipboards were trying to treat my cabin like a prop in their so-called emergency drill. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the sheer nerve. They waved papers that looked like they'd been printed on a home office inkjet and talked in the clipped tone of TV cops. And all I could think was, this is my land, my rules, and they're the intruders. Saturday morning had started the way I like it. Coffee, quiet, and a county survey map spread across the kitchen table. I was checking my property boundaries after a fence repair. My cabin sits 200 yards outside the Willowbrook HOA line, squarely on county land. I bought it that way on purpose to avoid HOA politics and power trips. Smart move? Or so I thought until I heard boots stomping up my front steps. They came up like they owned the place. Three men in reflective vests with HOA Patrol screen printed across the back, the letters slightly misaligned like someone eyeing them on in a garage. I knew Willowbrook didn't have patrols. The lead guy knocked like he had a warrant. He was mid-40s, thick around the middle, and wore the kind of swagger some people get when a plastic badge is the only thing making them feel important. "Morning, sir," he said without even introducing himself. "We're conducting mandatory emergency preparedness assessments in this sector. Need to inspect your property for compliance violations." I opened the door halfway and looked at the crooked ID card clipped to his vest. Sentry was missing the R. The expiration date looked like it had been scratched off with a coin. It would have been funny if they weren't already walking around my porch like border guards. "This cabin is outside HOA jurisdiction," I told him, pointing at the orange flag boundary stakes. "You see those? County land. Public parcel. HOA ends 200 yards that way." He chuckled like I'd told a joke. "Sir, insurance regulations require expanded drill zones during fire season. We have authority to inspect any property within the emergency response perimeter. Insurance regulations? Expanded drill zones?" It sounded like the kind of nonsense someone makes up after a half hour on a message board. I decided to play along for a minute. "Okay," I said. "Show me the insurance paperwork that gives you authority on county land." He fumbled, flipped through a clipboard, and produced a laminated sheet titled Ready Block 9 Emergency Protocol. It had a lot of official-sounding language, preparedness zones, compliance requirements, but nothing about county property, nothing about authority beyond HOA lines. While he was trying to sell the act, the other two drifted toward my back gate. I saw one of them feed a plastic zip tie through the latch and yank it tight. The tag they hung off it gleamed under my porch light in the morning sun. "Emergency Access Point. Do not remove." "Excuse me," I called. "What exactly are you doing back there?" The lead guy tried to block my view. "Standard safety checkpoint protocol, sir. Just marking inspected areas." I pushed past him to get a better look. "No, you're marking my gate like it's an evacuation route. This is private land. Remove it immediately." His friendly mask slipped. "Sir, you're interfering with official emergency preparedness operations. I suggest you cooperate." It wasn't just the bad acting. It was the way they said official, like they were hoping to scare me into nodding. I pulled out my phone, opened a county survey app, and showed him GPS coordinates with the HOA boundary line clearly visible. "Your HOA ends at that tree line," I said. "Everything from here to the creek is off HOA land. You're trespassing." He glanced at the screen and shrugged. "Emergency protocols override property boundaries. We're just doing our job." There it was. Either they didn't know what they were talking about, or they knew exactly what they were doing, and were betting I didn't. I went inside and came back with my printed county survey, the one with the surveyor's seal, and pointed 200 yards toward the trees. "Your authority ends over there." He barely pretended to look. "I'm going to need you to comply with the inspection, or we'll have to escalate this matter." "Escalate to who?" I asked, because the HOA board doesn't have enforcement power on county land, and the sheriff isn't going to let you LARP your way through my backyard. "Okay then," I said, pulling out my phone and dialing. Let's call the county sheriff and sort this out. That finally cracked the performance. He signaled to the other two. That won't be necessary, sir. We're just trying to keep the community safe. Community safety doesn't include marking private property or conducting unauthorized inspections, I said. If this is all legitimate, you won't mind explaining your authority to a deputy. They huddled up for a whispered conference at the base of my steps. When they turned back, the lead guy put on his official voice again. We'll need to report this non-adherence to the appropriate authorities. Your property may be flagged for emergency access if you don't cooperate with safety protocols. Emergency access to what? I asked. My cabin sits at the dead end of a county road, with no through traffic and the nearest neighbor a quarter-mile away. Who are these appropriate authorities? He shuffled his papers again. The, Emergency Preparedness Board works with multiple agencies to ensure community readiness. Vague. Purposefully vague. Gentlemen, I said, walking toward the back gate, you have 60 seconds to remove that zip tie and leave my property. After that, I'm calling county law enforcement to report trespassing. He tried one last scare tactic. This attitude is exactly why emergency protocols exist. Uncooperative residents put the entire community at risk. I almost laughed. Uncooperative with what? Fake patrols? Homemade ID cards? Insurance theater? They made a show of packing up and heading down my driveway with wounded dignity. But I noticed they left a bright yellow zip tie on my gate. The seal stays until the inspection is complete. The lead guy called back over his shoulder. As they walked away, one of them spoke into a radio. Base, this is Unit 7. Owner is non-compliant. Recommend escalation to Phase 2 protocols. Phase 2 protocols. They had phases. Someone was running an operation with fake authority, fake paperwork, and a tiered response plan for property owners who wouldn't play along. I stood on the porch and cooled off. Then I did the only thing that makes sense in situations like this. Document everything. Zip tie, boundary stakes, the county report, the GPS map. If they wanted to pretend to be official, I wanted a record of their trespass for county law enforcement. Something in my gut told me this was just opening day. Sunday morning, my neighbor Rebecca Shaw knocked on my door. Rebecca lives half a mile down the road and works as an accountant. She's one of those people who reads contract for fun. Those guys at your place, she said, opening her laptop at my table. None of it sits right. Real security teams must meet licensing rules. She pulled up the county clerk's site for HOA records and vendor agreements. One name jumped out. Neighborhood Resilience Ambassadors, LLC. 6 months earlier, Willowbrook HOA had signed a contract with them for safety consulting and emergency readiness training. The scope clearly limited services to HOA common areas. No patrols. No inspections. No county land. Here's the kicker, Rebecca said, highlighting the liability clause. Their insurance coverage only applies if they stay inside scope. If they step onto your land, they're not insured. She opened the state database for private guard licensing. No listing for Neighborhood Resilience Ambassadors. No listing for any similar name. No guard license. No authority. And the Ready Block 90 program they wave in your face? She said, pulling up another document. It's real. It gives HOAs premium discounts for running emergency preparedness drills, but only on HOA property, with notice to members. The insurer explicitly excludes non-member land. She clicked to HOA board minutes from 3 months ago. There was in black and white. A motion by Lydia Barnes, Emergency Preparedness and Compliance Chair, to expand drills beyond usual boundaries. The motion passed with the condition, follow county rules and secure all required permits. Did they get permits? I asked, already knowing the answer. Rebecca shook her head. I called county planning. They laughed. The county doesn't issue permits for HOAs to carry out inspections on private land. They can't enforce compliance on county owners. Period. She wasn't done. Here's the part that matters. She pulled up a clause in the vendor contract. Their insurance discount requires monthly logs to the insurer documenting drill activity and adherence. But all activities must be documented with owner consent. If they're faking that and submitting it, it's insurance fraud. A chill settled in. This wasn't just trespassing. It was likely insurance fraud with a fake security company as the enforcement arm. Rebecca pulled up the county assessor's map. There are a dozen private parcels like yours within a half-mile of the HOA boundary, she said, tracing the line with her finger. If they're tagging all of them as emergency access points, this is systematic trespass. They're likely after the activity hours to qualify for the Ready Block discount. She started making a list of owners to contact. We need to verify how many properties they've hit, and we should speak to the sheriff. Before she left, Rebecca said one more thing. When that radio call mentioned Phase 2, it rang a bell. The vendor contract mentions progressive enforcement measures, vague language like enhanced safety protocols but no definitions. If yesterday was Phase 1, Phase 2 probably means paperwork. Fake notices, formal violation letters, anything to create the appearance of authority. She was right, and they didn't make us wait. Monday night around 11:30, I woke to engines in my driveway and beams of light moving like white snakes across my yard. I slipped to the window. 3 pickups. At least 6 people. Clipboards. Hard cases. Flashlights. They work quietly, but not quietly enough. Bass. I heard through the night air when I cracked the window. Scouting unit. Target site appears unoccupied. Beginning perimeter assessment. Target site. They were talking about my cabin like it was an objective on a map. Copy, scouting. Document all access points and security vulnerabilities. We need comprehensive mapping for tomorrow's enforcement action. Enforcement action. I grabbed my phone and called my cousin Ray. 20 years in the Army and a hobbyist love for electronics made him the perfect person to hear this. Ray, I said, keeping my voice down, I need a favor. Bring your spectrum analyzer. Someone's using radios they shouldn't be using. I'm on my way, he said, instantly alert. I stayed at the window and recorded. They stretched barrier tape across my driveway like a crime scene. Cones labeled Emergency Zone Access popped up on my gravel, bright and arrogant. One guy tested my gate latch. Another examined my lock. Someone sketched on a clipboard while a partner took pictures of my cabin, outbuildings, and vehicles from multiple angles. Ray arrived the way he always does, quietly, with exactly the right tools. He parked out of sight and cut through the trees. Within minutes, he'd set up his signal detector and a compact directional antenna. Let's see who they think they are, he whispered. He didn't have to work hard. They're transmitting on restricted bands, he said, eyes on his screen. Overpowered, too, bleeding into licensed services. They're using military-grade encrypted comms that require authorization. Even police departments have to request. Private crews can't legally touch this. Federal communications law is not an area people want to test. Unauthorized use of restricted frequencies. Interference with licensed operators. Failure to identify stations. Operation of encrypted communications without authorization. Each one is a serious violation. Ray set his analyzer to record everything. Around midnight, the team started packing up. Before leaving, they plucked a yellow zip tie from my gate and removed a couple of small devices they had planted near my fence line. Ray marked a spike on his screen. They're taking something, he whispered. Evidence. Control. I heard the leader say on the radio. Scouting complete. Target land mapped and documented. Enforcement team ready for dawn deployment with enhanced protocols. Enhanced protocols. Phase 3 was coming. By dawn, Ray had compiled a rock-solid packet. Frequency logs. Timestamps. Audio recordings. Equipment signatures that showed restricted technology being used by unlicensed people. This alone will get the FCC's attention, he said. But considering they're jamming emergency bands, the FBI may be interested too. Tuesday morning brought neighbors to my door. Martha from a mile down the road. Frank, a volunteer firefighter for 30 years. Sarah, who lives in a restored farmhouse with her family. Each of them carried manila folders like they'd just left a courthouse. They were at my place, Martha said, sliding her phone across my table. They tried to inspect my horse pasture for urgent access checks. When I told them to leave, they said I was putting community at risk. Frank nodded. 3 guys pushed into my workshop and said they needed to check for fire hazards. I told them I've been fighting fires longer than they've been buying reflective vests. Sarah had a video of a man marking her children's swing set as a staging site. When I asked for authority, she said, "They got hostile. Then they slipped this under my door." She showed me an invoice signed by Emergency Preparedness and Oversight Chair Lydia Barnes, threatening penalties under a non-existent Emergency Management Penalty Notice. I pulled my research out of a folder. There is no such thing as an Emergency Management Penalty Notice in the county code. It's fiction. They're creating fake legal authority to intimidate property owners into compliance. We decided to stop dealing with them one by one. Sarah called an impromptu meeting at the county fire station. That night, 18 people showed up, representing 14 properties. We spread fake business cards, threatening letters, and photos of unauthorized markings across tables like evidence boards. The pattern was undeniable. An organized operation with printed materials, coordinated messaging, and systematic targeting. An elderly couple spoke quietly from the back. The team leader told us that in a real emergency, responders might prioritize properties that cooperate. The husband said. He said they might leave non-compliant properties for later. Extortion disguised as emergency preparedness. By the end of the night, we agreed to file formal complaints with county law enforcement and compile everything for federal investigators. Martha took point on contacting owners. Frank would talk to contacts in the volunteer fire department. Sarah volunteered outreach. The next time they showed up, we would be ready as a community, not isolated targets. Wednesday morning, the campaign escalated from property to person. Sarah called, shaking with anger. They plastered town with flyers calling you a threat. Check the grocery store bulletin board. I did more than check. I found copies at the post office, hardware store, coffee shop, and tucked under windshield wipers in parking lots. Dangerous resident threatens community safety, the headline screamed, with my name and a photo of my cabin below. It accused me of interfering with emergency responders and sabotaging safety efforts for children and seniors. A hotline number for the Willowbrook Emergency Preparedness Board urged citizens to report suspicious activity and listed my address. I tore one down and went straight to the copy shop. The clerk remembered the order. 500 copies, paid in cash by a woman who said it was for a neighborhood watch. This was coordinated defamation designed to isolate me from community support. The calls started rolling in. What's going on? Is this true? We know you. This doesn't sound like you. Rebecca's voice cut through the noise. I know why they're desperate. She had dug deeper into the Ready Block program. The HOA had already reported increased drill hours and received a substantial premium reduction. They were contractually committed to maintaining at least 40 hours of documented activity per month to keep the discount. No activity hours, no discount and clawbacks. They can't hit their monthly requirement without private property owners, she said. If we refuse, they lose the insurance discount and have to repay past reductions with penalties. The Ready Block program became a financial lifeline. Lydia Barnes personally guaranteed the board's specific savings. If this collapses, she faces personal liability. The smear campaign didn't stop at posters. Martha's friend at the bank said someone called warning about anti-community extremists. Frank got calls to his employer implying he supported anti-safety activists. Sarah's children's school received handbills warning about families who oppose urgent safety protocols that protect students. They had decided to weaponize fear. That night, Rebecca called again. One more thing, she said. The Ready Block clawback provision is brutal. If an HOA fails to maintain required activity levels, they owe immediate repayment of all premium reductions plus penalties. Lydia signed documents guaranteeing compliance. I followed the money farther. She's siphoning HOA funds through the fake vendor. This isn't just about discounts anymore. It's about covering up theft. Thursday morning, at the sound of twin Harley engines, I knew we were done playing defense. Ray rolled in with his sister Tessa on the second bike. Tessa spent 15 years in Army communications. She had eyes like a hawk in a backpack, full of gear that could map a radio network to the inch. "Show me," she said without small talk. By the time the fake patrol returned at 10, with a PA system, traffic cones, and 8 people in mismatched HOA patrol vests, Ray had his analyzer ready and Tessa had a small surveillance station set up in the trees. They made a show of setting up a speaker on the county road. "Attention residents," the lead guy announced. "This property is under emergency compliance check. Stay indoors for safety." I opened my door and held up my phone. "This property is under federal surveillance," I said, "and your radios are already being recorded." Through them, the leader tried to regain rhythm. Interfering with emergency work is a serious offense. Running unlicensed security and jamming federal frequencies is the real offense, I said. Across the road, cameras lifted as neighbors arrived, Martha, Frank, and Sarah, followed by more phones going live on social media. "Same illegal frequencies," Ray murmured, eyes on the scope. "They're jamming emergency bands now. That's a felony." Through her lens, Tessa narrated. "Fake IDs, mismatched serials, vests say HOA patrol, badges say neighborhood resilience, false authority." Within minutes, the live streams began to spread beyond our county. Retired law enforcement officers joined the comment sections. Emergency management pros weighed in. Lawyers dissected the legal claims. "Not a licensed patrol," one wrote. "Unauthorized comms," another posted. "Those frequencies are restricted." Then Tessa captured the visual that pulled the last thread loose. One of the men adjusted his vest, revealing the inside tag. The outside read, HOA security, but the interior label showed generic security vest, no official authorization. She zoomed in and froze the frame. Visible proof of misrepresented authority. On the radio, panic. Control. Civilians are recording. Request guidance on media management. Abort current protocols. The voice replied. Withdraw to secondary positions. Immediately. Media management. They had a plan for cameras. They didn't have a plan for thousands of people watching from across the state and beyond. By noon they were gone, retreating to HOA boundaries. Ray and Tessa had hours of high-definition video with timestamps and GPS coordinates. The patrol's illegal operation was out in the open, dissected by professionals, amplified by everyday people who recognize abuse when they see it. Friday morning, federal investigators arrived with real badges. Agent Martinez from the FCC Enforcement Bureau. Agent Carter specializing in interference cases. They sat at my table with laptops and questions, and Ray handed over encrypted drives like we were submitting a term paper on fraud. These transmissions violated multiple federal regulations, Agent Carter said. Scrolling through the data. Unauthorized use of restricted frequencies. Interference with licensed operators. Operation of encrypted communications without authorization. We also have evidence of jamming emergency services. While they analyzed the radio violations, Rebecca laid out a separate stack. Bank statements, vendor contracts, invoices, emails. She had uncovered that Neighborhood Resilience Ambassadors was a shell company controlled by Lydia Barnes through her husband's license. The HOA paid invoices for emergency preparedness consulting. Lydia submitted compliance reports claiming expanded participation by private property owners to maintain the Ready Block discount. The HOA got the discount. Lydia pocketed the money. She diverted nearly $50,000 in 6 months, Rebecca said. A chunk siphoned into personal accounts. Some flowed into Trent Doyle's gear. The rest disguised as training hours to justify billing. Agent Martinez read through the financials. Financial fraud tied to federal communications violations expands our jurisdiction, she said. If the fake security operation supported insurance fraud, we have a broader criminal enterprise. Agent Carter zoomed in on photos of their radios. They were using military-grade encryption. Civilians can't legally purchase or operate this tech without authorization. That triggers national security protocols. Frank came in with a list of other HOAs. 3 other communities hired the same company for emergency preparedness. Same pattern. Same tactics. Within hours, the investigation expanded to multiple jurisdictions. Federal prosecutors prepared warrants. The case moved from radio violations on a county road to organized criminal enterprise with communications crimes, insurance fraud, embezzlement, and unlicensed security operations. Saturday morning, federal vehicles rolled down county roads. Agent Martinez called to say search warrants were being executed across 3 communities. Lydia Barnes and Trent Doyle are in custody, she said. Charges include communications violations, wire fraud, money laundering, and organized criminal activity. Agents found the receipts. Fraudulent reports spanning 2 years. Shell company ledgers. Evidence of personal enrichment. Travel, home improvements, luxury purchases. All funded with HOA money. Ready block discounts built on fake compliance hours. Bank records that made it clear. Lydia had turned emergency preparedness into a cash machine. It wasn't just Willowbrook. Across 4 HOA communities, investigators found 12 fake vendor contracts and more than $200,000 in fraudulent billing. Trent had used stolen HOA funds to buy restricted radio equipment. He ran unauthorized networks to coordinate intimidation. They wanted to play authority. They bought costumes and gadgets. They forgot you can't counterfeit credentials forever. Consequences came quick. Insurance companies canceled policies upon discovering fraudulent compliance reporting. State boards suspended Lydia's emergency management certifications. Lawyers filed notice of financial clawbacks for past premium discounts. Federal prosecutors used our live stream footage to show deliberate criminal intent. People who knew they had no authority. Continuing anyway, Lydia pled guilty to wire fraud, communications violations, and money laundering, facing 8 to 12 years. Full restitution. Asset forfeiture. Trent faced separate charges for communications crimes and operating an unlicensed security service. Federal court orders prohibited anyone involved from conducting emergency preparedness consulting or security services in our region again. County officials passed ordinances with real teeth, penalties for boundary breaches, clear identification requirements for legitimate responders, and a simple rule we all understood. Property rights and public safety don't compete when the law is clear. By autumn, the county looked like itself again. The fake emergency access tags were gone. Fresh boundary signs stood where they belonged. The FCC monitored frequencies. The volunteer fire department adopted clear protocols to distinguish actual emergency responders from anyone in a reflective vest with script. County emergency management held community workshops on how to verify authority and when to call the sheriff. On a cool Saturday morning, I stood on my porch and watched the sun climb over county land that still sat outside HOA reach. Orange flag boundary stakes marked the line I had defended. The gate latch, my gate latch, clicked under my hand the way it should. Down the road, I heard a kid laughing. Someone raked. Somewhere a motorcycle growled in that contented way that says weekend. We didn't beat them by shouting louder. We beat them by standing our ground, by documenting everything, by reminding each other that private property rights and public safety go hand in hand when everyone plays by the rules. We held the line with pictures and statutes and names. We turned isolation into community. We turned intimidation into accountability. And when the fake emergency preparedness turned into real federal crimes, we made sure the right people heard it. Maybe the lesson is simple. Question authority, especially when it arrives with a laminated sheet and a homemade badge. Check the boundary markers. Call the sheriff. Record the transmission. And remember that community means nothing without consent, law, and respect. For what it's worth, it felt damn good to watch men who thought a vest made them invincible walk away, while federal agents pulled real badges out of real wallets. It felt good knowing they tried to bulldoze us with fake authority, and ended up exposed for frauds they were. And it still feels good when I sit on these steps with strong coffee and sunlight on my boots and hear a neighbor's dog bark in the distance. This is home. This is county land. These are property rights. And this time, the right side won. If you read this far, I'd like to know how it made you feel. Drop a line. Stories like this only matter because people like you keep them alive. Stay sharp. Stay stubborn. and keep your coffee strong.